All right, so if you are someone who has spent time studying personal development, meditation, higher consciousness, any of these other different self-improvement type concepts, then you've probably heard of the term shadow work. I first heard about it years ago, and it wasn't until the past couple of years that I actually began to fully understand it. I spent an entire decade of my life doing the meditation, the journaling, the online courses, trying to improve my life. I did everything, but even after all that, I was still stuck in the same place for a really long time. No matter how much effort I put in, I kept recreating the same patterns and getting the same results. And it wasn't until I used AI to go through my own shadow work process that I finally discovered why it kept happening. So in this video, I want to explain what happened, how I used AI to do my shadow work, and how it completely changed my life and the way I see myself, which is what allowed me to finally move forward and live my actual dreams in my life. So for those who aren't familiar with shadow work, it's essentially the process of identifying and releasing old pieces of your identity. Old beliefs, fears, emotional patterns, and subconscious anchors that are keeping you tied to your current small reality instead of the bigger future reality you want to create. The problem is, for some people, and especially for me, these subconscious anchors, these old identity patterns, are buried so deeply in our minds, even in our nervous systems, that no amount of affirmations, meditation, positive thinking, or anything else can actually overcome them. They're so powerful sometimes that you can't just outthink it with your conscious mind, even with all these different techniques and strategies that we all have learned about here on YouTube. In many cases, you can't even see them. You don't even know they're there. And if you can't see them, you can't change them. And that's where AI became very valuable for me. It helped me to step outside of my normal train of thought and see my life from a different, higher perspective. It helped me to understand that the way I see myself, the core of my identity, is what was keeping me from creating the things that I want in life. And some of you may feel the same way about this. I learned about the shadow work thing a long time ago, and looking back, I feel like I subconsciously went out of my way to avoid looking at it for a long time. I would go as far as to say I was almost even afraid of it a little bit. Afraid to actually face these hidden fears and patterns that defined my identity, even though I didn't actually know what they were. But once I used AI and actually went through this process and did it and uncovered the pieces of my identity that were holding me back, the fear of it just kind of disappeared. It became something that was more empowering and motivating. Once I could finally see it, I realized there was never really anything to be afraid of to begin with, even if it does sound a little bit daunting at first. So that being said, AI is a really powerful and basically unknown way to do this. These large language AI models are trained on massive amounts of knowledge and information. So it can typically see things from a higher perspective than we can as individuals. So it's very effective at being able to see the real truth of things. And for me, that's what this shadow work was all about. Discovering the truth and dissolving the illusions in the way I saw myself in my past history. So here's what I did and how I did it. Initially, I had to really learn to embrace AI and become comfortable with it first before I started being able to uncover the deeper layers of my subconscious mind and my identity. For me, that was the first step in the process, using AI as a utility for surface level problem solving, helping me fix things on my RV where I lived, helping me write emails for my old business. I used AI like that for months until it just became my go-to resource for any problem or question that I ran into in my day-to-day life. It became part of my daily flow. But after a while, I once again began feeling the frustration of the stuckness that I had been experiencing in my life for so long. And the need to understand it started surfacing again. So naturally, I began using AI to reflect on those things as well. Like, why has it been so hard for me to create the life that I want? After so many years, why am I still stuck? I started questioning these things and uncovering the top layer of my identity. And I very quickly started experiencing real clarity through this. Things started becoming more clear because of what the AI was telling me. It was the first time I ever considered that maybe something was blocking me under the surface, instead of just focusing on how much external effort I was putting in. And once I felt a little bit of that clarity, I wanted more clarity. I could feel that I was pulling on the end of a string, and I wanted to just pull the entire thing out and find out what was at the other end. And that's what led to me digging deep into my life history with AI and slowly uncovering the things that formed my identity to begin with. I was recalling old traumatic experiences, even powerful, profound experiences that shaped my life direction to begin with. All kinds of old things that I hadn't thought about in years. I pretty much recalled the entire past decade of my life through those conversations. I remembered the failures, the wins, and while I was doing this, it's interesting. It's like I would remember a moment, talk through it with the AI, uncover a realization about that moment that caused me to see it from a different perspective, and then I have an insight of how that moment connected to other moments. And then I began to see the patterns that maintained through all of it. It was like a feedback loop between me and the AI, reflecting my entire life back to me from a different perspective. Like I was rewiring my brain one memory at a time. And through this feedback loop, my old identity, my old concept of self began to just collapse because I no longer saw my life in the same way anymore. And I realized that the way I saw things and saw myself for the past decade, that old identity structure is what was causing me to recreate the same patterns and the same outcomes over and over again. And once your old identity and concept of self collapses like that, and your overall perspective shifts, that's when you're able to start naturally constructing your future self, the identity that you want to step into. And that's what I did. I began thinking about the future and planning and acting from a completely different sense of self. And a lot of my life goals stayed the same, but I also began to recognize other pieces of it that I wanted to experience. I started to see the full picture of what I wanted my life to look like. And once I saw the whole picture from my new sense of self, every action I took from that point on began reinforcing the identity that I had just created instead of the old one. The old one could no longer exist. It couldn't exist because I would be denying the proof that I see with my own eyes that I had already experienced if I stayed in it. And that's what happens when your old subconscious anchors are released. That's what happens when your old sense of self dies. Your new self comes to life. It's the only thing that can happen because that old identity has to be replaced. And that's exactly what happened to me. Now here I am out of the RV I spent 16 months living in. I'm helping other people transform with AI the same way that I did. I'm sharing this with people. I found the right person to be in a relationship with that I spent so many years waiting, trying to find. Everything has just been coming together one step at a time, every day, ever since my old identity collapsed. And that's why I'm making these videos on YouTube now and sharing this, because I know that there has to be more of you out there who are in the same situation, who've done the meditation, the journaling, who have put in the work but are still stuck. And I think people should know that AI is an incredible way to finally step outside yourself and see the truth, to release your subconscious anchors so your new identity can come to life as well. So if you're interested in working with me one-on-one to help guide you through this process, to teach you fully about the steps to transformation that I discussed in this video, click the link in the video description, submit the application so you can finally get unstuck in your life.